Good morning, afternoon. Oh gosh, I need a nap already. Man, February, mid-February already. I know I missed
Yeah,
last week.
yeah.
Skip covered for me, so
Mhm.
at least we had that going for us. You guys put up with Skip.
I made it quick, If you gotta do it, might as well get it over with, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like last week, like the kids have been calling it the plague, right? It's it's hitting everybody. And
Mm.
like half of like my son's choir is like they had to cancel practice the other day.
Yep.
It's like and the plague has hit. And so what we want to do is kind of show people, man, February kind of gets away from you. It's such a short month anyways, but we're 6 weeks in, almost 6 weeks into the year. That is crazy.
Yep. Well,
And
and I noticed it too, and so, just kinda highlight some of these things, if this is an issue, sometimes you can work on it, but, um, I'm working with our members, and lots of times we're on a fairly regular schedule. We
yep,
meet every so often. The last couple of weeks, things have just been, drying up. I'm reaching out to people like, "Hey, where you at?" And they'll respond 3 days later, and like, "Oh yes, I know, I got to get back on this." And then all of a sudden a meeting pops up on my calendar. So you get into these cycles, and sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it, but in knowing that they're going to come up and planning some of the other things that you got going on, that can mitigate some of the challenges we have with these black holes of time that just kind of float throughout the calendar.
yeah. So I was like looking at this. I was like trying to write an email to one of our members. And I was like, "Holy crap! Next week is the 15th already." It just, I just, it never ceases to amaze me every year that things go by so quickly. And how do we deal with that? How do we get ahead of schedule so that we don't lose time? I was talking to one. I was like, "Hey, look, if you start doing meetings with clients today, you're already behind. You're
Yeah, that's
gonna
true.
if I
That's true.
send an email to a prospective client today, I'm gonna get a meeting with them in March. So I've already missed a quarter of the year.
Yeah.
That's a quarter of the year of sales that you've lost. You will never get that back. It's quarter year of opportunities you're never going to get back. That's why it's really, really important to follow a calendar with your MSP every year.
Yeah.
If you
Now,
don't follow
if
that
you're in that,
calendar, you're going to forget.
yeah. Now, if you're in that, you know, issue right now, in that challenge of, hey, I haven't been doing this, I don't have meetings set, don't don't kick the rock down the road. Okay.
Yeah.
I was talking to some other day, and
I
they
just
came out and
used that phrase in an email. Don't kick the ball down the field.
they were like, we're really busy. I think we're just going to push this out to Q3.
Yeah.
And I know what's going to happen. They're going to get Q3, and they're going to think, all right, let's evaluate this, and let's look at doing this, launching with this in Q1. But guess what? They're going to be a year lost in this, and it's
Yep.
time you just can't recover. So you've got to just stop, get on track. It may not be exactly what you want, and that's to be expected. That's okay. But if you start now, you'll be that much further ahead than if you wait. So
Yeah.
don't wait any longer.
Every year we've been consulting with MSPs since 2017. And every single year we get a bunch of MSPs hitting the panic button in October through
Yep.
December. Every year. Like, well, we meant to kick off our process in January. We just got busy.
Yep.
And so they kick it down the road, kick it down the road, and then they're in panic mode. And what's going to change this year? If you don't get ahead of this, how are you going to change? And so that's where we talk about, like, our first quarter with Humanize IT is architecture focused.
Yep.
What hardware and software are your clients using? This is the baseline of everything. It's going to tell you what kind of services you can give them, what kind of risks are in their portfolio, and it's going to drive everything you do. So the first quarter of the year seems like a nothing quarter because you're just busy working tickets, you're getting projects done, and so there's no real pressure to do strategic analysis. And that's incorrect. You should be auditing your customers this month. You should have already started auditing them in January, February, so
Mhm.
that in April you can come to the table, whether it's a government, whether it's education, or whether it's just private sector. You can come to the table with them with a budget, with what you need to be doing, and how you can help them in the next year.
Yep.
And when you do that, you get ahead, and it'll feel like you're not missing anything until it's too late.
Yep.
And that's why we say this week we talk about architecture personas. It's a boring thing and something you should be doing naturally, but it's going to result in a lot of cash 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And that's a big switch in your business. When you stop thinking about what's my break fix and you start thinking about where are my next clients coming from? How many clients do I need to meet with to get 3 new clients? How many clients do I need to talk to get 6 new projects? And so when you're using a persona, like we create these personas in our software, we say, put the stuff in front of your client that are results of your architecture audits.
Mm-hmm.
So you do an architecture audit in January when you have downtime, when everybody's busy, people aren't meeting, but everybody's excited to get going with the year. You walk on the site, do an architecture audit, make sure you get a nice baseline for the system. And then when February say, hey, here's what we discovered. You're a little bit behind here.
Let me set the scope here too on architecture. So there's a variety of ways you can categorize this. Ours follows a bit of a maturity model as well here. So when we're looking at architecture, we want to understand what do they have? Yep. And this can be physical devices. It can be a solution that they're subscribing to, hosted services, rented data centers. It doesn't matter. It is a what that they have. Now, it's really important that we understand where they're at right now and identify any gaps. That's the really important element, because next quarter, we're going to talk about services. And services is centered on how they're using the what. Well, if you don't have that figured out here, when you get to the next quarter, you're going to be scrambling, because you're going to be saying, you should be doing this, great thing. But then you start to dig in and go, oh, wait, but they don't have the architecture they need to do this great thing. So there's a little bit of maturity here that you can take your clients through. And sometimes it's not going to be quarter by quarter. I mean, I know some of your clients, you're going to be lucky to get year by year. That's okay. Just as long as you understand, we got to have the what before we can use it. So this architecture is, what do they have?
Yeah. And that's where doing these audits in the first quarter are going to result in more revenue down the road. I have met with so many of these businesses where no one has audited their infrastructure in a decade. And I'm certain every one of you MSPs had great intentions, like, oh, we'll audit it someday.
And a scan is not an audit. Okay. Yes. A report on whatever is in the RMM is not an audit.
That's just an automated report. View what's going on.
Yes.
A human needs to say, a human needs to say, they have these things. They should be moving to this. That is an NP complete problem, as we say in computer science. It's not something that can be solved by a script, a bot, or anything. You have to actually put your human mind to work and look at the architecture and then create a personality around this company about what's going on. So that when you're looking at these personas, when you're putting it in front of the client, you're saying, hey, I know you're trying to serve more kids. I know you're trying to get to these goals. Your business goal is to make standardized testing more fluid, to support more of your teachers, to allow your doctor's offices to get more scans out to clients, whatever it is. What architecture is going to support that? And so you should be able to put in your persona, this is your persona built around this business goal. This is a persona built around what architecture, if they buy this laptop, what's it going to help them do in their business? You can't do that until you know where the gaps are, where the white space is.
Yeah.
And so you've got to go in January and you've got to do that audit. You gotta get that baseline, that gap analysis. So you say, oh my gosh, I didn't know they were still using compact laptops.
Well, and it's got to be in the context of their business too. So again, that's where these, just standard inventory reports don't work, because in my standard example in this one is battery backup. How long do you need on the batteries? Okay. For some customers, 10 minutes, that's all they care about. If the lights go off, they're going fishing. They don't really care.
Yeah.
Others are going to sit and work for days on end in the dark, right? Their needs are different. So as you do these audits, it's always within the context of what does this business need?
And that's going to give your client a competitive advantage.
Yes.
You don't have to define the competitive advantage.
Mm-mm.
You're simply asking them, what do you need? Hey, given this architecture you have, like, you don't care what laptops you're running. You don't care if they're fully depreciated or not. What you care about is, given your market, and given that you want to do more business with dog kennels, you want to have more students come in, you want to have more patients have a better experience, here is what you need to get there. And that's what the client wants to hear. Just like when you take your car into the mechanic, you don't want to know all the nuances to your car. You want to know, what does it take to get it back on the road so I'll have to bring it back in?
Yeah.
What can I do to get better gas mileage? Because, man, gas prices are hiking up again. Your mechanic will respond to you with, here's how you solve the problem. It's going to cost you $500. And so that's how you build trust with your customer, because you're solving a business problem that's going to result in them getting a competitive advantage, all because you got a baseline architecture audit, and then you talk to them about which things do they need to cover the gap.
Yeah, and it's all about what's important to them. So you mentioned the car analogy again, and so there's this term, you might have heard of it, right? I'm a little bit of a car guy, not much, all right, but this term that gets thrown out pretty often, OEM, right? Other equipment manufacturers or original equipment manufacturers. Kind of depends on which way you want to go with it. But when you go to get your car repaired, your mechanics is going to buy a part. Where does that part come from? Right? Do you really care where that part comes from? Now, if you're kind of the car guy, yes, you have a very, very definite opinion on that. But if you're just wanting your car to work right and you're tired of the problems, you take it to someone and you want it fixed, you're not that concerned about where that part came from, as long as it wasn't stolen, right? And your clients are that way as well. You've got a few really technical people and they're like, no, I'm an HP fan. That's fine, right? But for the most part, your clients, they don't really care the make and model number of the devices they have. All these different features, they just want it to do what they need it to do. And just like the person who drives the giant truck versus the small little commuter, econo car, they've got different needs.
Yeah.
And so you've got to match your client's needs up with the technology, and the audit helps you put all that together. It helps you bring it all together so you can concisely say, you do have this or you don't have this, and this is what we need to do to get you where you need to be.
Yeah, and don't make an audit a huge, long, massive process.
Right.
Try to make an audit that will take you 15 minutes to do per client. 15 minutes. You got a time box. I'm going to challenge you here right now.
Yeah.
If you want a great architecture persona that's going to give your client what they need, what questions can you answer as an engineer in 15 minutes by looking at their environment? And that's going to help you prioritize what actually matters. And then when you go talk to your client, you won't overwhelm them. If you're spending 6 to 10 hours auditing their environment and then coming back to your client and showing them all that information, you're going to lose. They're going to be overwhelmed and they're not going to care. But when you think in terms of, like, I need to do a 15-minute audit from the time I walk in the door at this client. So I'm going to do a physical audit. Walk in the door. I'm going to pull up what? What can I find out? Don't count sticks of RAM. Stop counting hard drives. Stop counting all this. That's it.
Yep.
And you now need to say, okay, they have this many laptops, this many desktops. They have this many servers. They have these servers that are doing this thing or that thing. Oh, man, that server's core to their business. We should probably see what we can do about that. But if you spend all your time counting sticks of RAM, you would have never gotten to that third question of, oh, this server is their main SQL cluster. We really need to make sure that this is pushing the client for is taken care of. It's 7 years old. This thing's due to fail.
Yeah.
So you talk to your client about the risk management of it, or say, hey, look, if you upgrade this, your SQL cluster is going to run much faster and you'll be able to process more data per day, which means more cash for you. You can now answer these questions with architecture. So the next quarter, you have this architecture audit sitting there, and now you can determine what services you need to give them.
Yeah.
And that's going to compound into third quarter. We say, what risks are facing the company and how can you use services and architecture to cover them? Then you're going to move into fourth quarter and you're going to say, hey, here's your budget. Here's the gaps we had for 2024. Here's how we're going to deal with 2025 to make you even better. Not from a hardware standpoint, software standpoint, but from an overall business goal standpoint. And that's where you start winning. And it all starts today with architecture audits. And they don't have to be fancy and really complicated. They have to be comprehensive at the 10,000 foot level. You have to have that overall view. So when you walk into mechanic, think of it as like, they're not going to go in and take your entire engine apart and count all the nuts and bolts. No, they're going to look at it as like, that is a Ford F-150 2015, and it's making a ticking noise.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Your mechanic's doing that, a quick assessment. That's what these architecture assessments should be. That's why when we build our templates, they're quick. You should be able to go bam, 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 right down the line. And that is going to result in you sales. That's going to get you $10,000 in projects. That's going to get you a client who trusts you. And that's where we want you to be.
Yep.
Stop overthinking architecture audits.
Yep.
Stop trying to deliver ones that are trying to sell everything. Instead, use an architecture persona to tell the client what they need to know to make their business better.
And a little bit of help in doing those architectures, especially from the engineering perspective. Be comprehensive, be complete. All right. Go ahead and look at the whole picture. But here's the cool part. So we go through, we identify the things they're missing. We've identified the gaps. In some cases, there's just too many gaps to take care of. Back to what I mentioned earlier. I mean, you may work with some clients year over year trying to close the gap in their architectures, and that's to be expected. Some things will move faster than others. But if we know which gaps we have, and then we come into the next service or the next quarter with services, and this will follow up like Adam was talking about with risk as well, it allows us to prioritize things.
Yep.
So we get in here and we know, hey, they really need this service, but they don't have that solution. All right.
Yep.
Maybe we can't do that one. But we look at the 4 other things that they really need to do, and they do have the architecture in place to do those. Great. Let's start with that. All right. Because now we can, get something done right away. We can show some quicker value for their technology spend. We're not going to ignore those other items, but it gives us a flexibility to maybe, hey, if cash flow, is an issue here or whatever, we can push that on down a little bit because we're making progress in other areas. We're showing the value where we're actually delivering things to help them rather than just hammering on this one thing that we think they really, really need.
And that's why we refer to this as the Humanize IT framework. We're doing things now that will help you later. And we've got this consistent delivery. So those of you paying attention to these community updates every week, and there's a lot of you, if you're doing our action items that are below this video every week, then things get easier throughout the year. And we're not asking you to do big, complicated things. We're asking you to do little, tiny things that add up. These atomic habits, these little, tiny, iterative things that you do that are going to pay off big throughout the year. You keep repeating this over year, and you don't have to think like, oh, I don't have time to do this now. No, you've been doing little, tiny slices of it throughout the year. And when you get to the end of the year, you're feeling confident because, man, you can stay on top of things. And now you're going to start next year and you're going to do it even better. Mm-hmm. Knowing that these little tiny things don't take that long. These little architecture audits don't take that long. Now you're more willing to do them, or maybe you can hire an intern to do them, or maybe you can kick them down to a lower level employee. But the great thing is you're doing them. You're not waiting another month. You're not pushing off to the end of the year. You're doing them now. Yeah. I like architecture audits. They're boring, but at the same time, they fuel everything we do. Yeah. and I'm excited to talk to some more clients about this. I love people who kind of kick off their subscriptions and kick off their year with us every January, February, because these people are getting ahead and they're changing something right off the bat, so they don't just have another year like last year.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Great.
one last encouraging word here. I mean, like I said, if you aren't doing these, go ahead and get started. It's not something that you have to do with every single client right now. It's one of the things that we do in our onboarding is we pick 5, right? And so maybe this isn't something that you're going to have the time to roll out with all your clients. I think you probably would, but just set expectations that you're comfortable with. Maybe we'll do this with just a handful or a couple of handfuls of clients, and we'll at least be that much better and that much more profitable in these clients as we move forward, rather than just waiting again for, I'll try that again next year and see if we can make that happen. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Start small, expand out, be successful. You only need to be successful with 2 to 3 clients at first, then 4, then 5.
Yep,
then
that's
6.
it.
Snowball it until you are successful across your entire client base. But it starts today. It doesn't start tomorrow. It starts today.
There you go.
All right, Skip. We'll see you all next week.
See ya.